Hey, I would like to welcome everybody to today's Lunch and Learn. We are welcoming back Bria from Actuarial. So happy to have her back. I am going to just let Bria kick off, and then at the end, we will have some time for questions. So feel free to put them in the chat. Feel free to put them in the Q&A, and we'll get to your questions at the end. So take it away, Bria.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me back. I'm so excited for this. Okay, I do have a lot to go through today because there is so much that I have to share with you about starting your actuarial journey, especially the courses and things you can do early on when you're just considering the actuarial career, or if you're maybe still in high school deciding that maybe you want to pursue the actuarial career. There's so much you can do very early on. So that's really what we're going to be talking about today. If you are someone that has been considering the career, I totally understand if things have been a little bit confusing at this point, because there is a lot of information online, but I feel like there's so many steps and so many different things that are talked about in the actuarial field and things that you should do. And it can become a little bit overwhelming in some ways. And I was actually in your same situation not too long ago. I decided that I wanted to be an actuary when I was in high school, but I just really did not know where to start. I heard about actuarial exams, and I really thought that that was the main thing that I had to focus my time on, but there are so many other things that I ended up doing, fortunately, but I really didn't have a lot of guidance in that area. So today I'm going to be sharing with you some of the courses that would be really beneficial if you are considering the actuarial career, or even if you know for sure you want to become an actuary. We're going to talk about some of the technical skills that you could start working on to really advance your knowledge and understanding of those early on. And we're also going to talk about how you could get some experience that's relevant to the actuarial career that's going to help make you a better candidate later on. Really, that's what I do, is I help future actuaries become top candidates for actuarial jobs so that they can successfully get their first actuarial job. So first off, we'll start with those courses that you might want to consider taking, whether you're in high school or whether you're going into college. It doesn't matter. These are going to be relevant courses no matter what grade you're in, all that sort of stuff. So number one is you're going to want to be taking lots of math and stats courses. If you can get into some courses that specifically teach probability and calculus, those are going to be really helpful. When I was in high school, I remember learning like introduction to calculus, and that later on was really helpful in my actuarial career, especially because the exams that you have to take to become an actuary, especially the early ones, those include a lot of calculus, they include probability concepts and that sort of thing. So if you can gain that early foundational understanding of those concepts now, while you're still in high school or very early on in your actuarial journey, it's going to be really beneficial later on, and it's going to help you probably get through the exams quicker because you'll just be able to have that knowledge beforehand and you won't have to learn it all when you go to start studying for your first exams. So that was math, stats, probability, and calculus. Those kinds of things are going to be really beneficial. Another type of course you'll want to look into, if your school offers them, is courses that are around economics. And in economics courses, you're going to be learning about things like interest rates, like inflation, like supply and demand, exchange rates, all those sort of things that have to do with financial topics. And those are going to be really beneficial because there are also exams that test those concepts early on in your actuarial journey. So the more you can be understanding these concepts early on, the better things are going to be for you. Financial and business classes are also a good way to go. The actuarial career is very heavily focused on the business side of insurance and the financial side of insurance. So having that understanding early on is going to be helpful. This is where you'll learn things like, you'll learn about income statements and balance sheets. You'll learn about investing and maybe even some things about insurance. And all that's going to give you a great foundation going into the actuarial career. And this is one that I didn't realize, this next one that I'm going to talk about is one that I didn't realize was going to be so beneficial for my actuarial career. But these were courses around technology. So when I was in high school, I remember taking a course. I forget exactly what the course was called, but we learned Excel, Microsoft Excel, throughout the whole course. So it was a whole term about just learning Excel. And at the time, I thought it was really interesting, but I had no idea that I was going to use that so much in my actuarial career. So if you can get into courses where you're going to be learning different technical skills, like Microsoft Excel is a really great one to learn. You're going to use that all the time in your actuarial job, most likely. That would be great to get your hands into, get some experience in. And also, if you can get into some courses where you're learning a programming language, that would also be really beneficial. For me, that's not something I learned in high school. I ended up learning programming a little bit later on when I was in university. I went to the University of Waterloo and majored in actuarial science there. But one of the main focuses in those courses that I took was just learning how to program. And that ended up being so beneficial in my actuarial career as well, because I was using that coding, the programming quite often. I would say probably at least 2 or 3 times a week I was using that. And it's not something that a lot of future actuaries take the time to learn. It's very difficult to learn how to program for the first time. So getting that knowledge very early on in your career will be something that benefits you throughout your entire actuarial career. And even if you do perhaps decide not to be an actuary, these are still going to be things that help you later on as well in other careers. These are things that so many employers are looking for right now. Okay, so those are a whole bunch of courses there. I'll quickly recap them just so you can write them down if you want to, in case you missed any. So that's math, stats courses, probability, calculus courses, economics, financial courses, and business courses, and some technology courses would all be great. So we did talk a little there about how technology was so important. And I do really want to emphasize learning Microsoft Excel. I talked about it already, and there might be some courses that you could take in your school where you could learn these things. But for a lot of people, those are unfortunately not courses that are available. So if that's something that's not available in your school, or maybe you do end up taking a course, but you just don't really feel like you're advanced enough in it, like you have to know Microsoft Excel inside and out in order to really be a top candidate for actuarial positions. So if you're really looking for more in that area, then I do highly recommend looking for places online where you could learn Excel and doing lots of projects in Excel. It's one thing to take a course and follow along what the instructor says to do. That sort of thing is like step one, but to really take your skills to the next level is when you can start to actually implement what you've learned in a course to a real world problem, and you can solve a real world problem using what you've learned in the Excel course. And that's really going to prove to actuarial employers that you have the knowledge and understanding and capabilities in Excel that they need you to have. What is even better is if you can take your Excel skills that you learn in a course and maybe do some practice projects, but then go one step further and use these skills in the workplace, like actually using them to help businesses. So this kind of leads into my next recommendation for you, which is to get some related experience in the actuarial field. Now, this is something you can do very early on, and it really helps to build up your resume. When I was in high school, I actually had some different, well, let's start with this. I call these types of positions that you get, that allow you to get related experience, I call them stepping stone positions. And basically, that's because they kind of help you make or gain a whole bunch of experience, relevant knowledge that's going to help make you really knowledgeable for a career in the actuarial field. It's going to give you some skills that actuarial employers are going to be looking for, and it's just overall going to give you a good foundation to work in an actuarial role. So I call them stepping stone positions, okay? They help you make the leap from having no experience at all to an actuarial position, because it can be really difficult to make that jump from no experience directly into an actuarial role. It's really helpful to have that little stepping stone in the middle. So that's why it's called a stepping stone position. So with this stepping stone position, you're getting a lot of relevant experience. It's helping to build up your resume and make sure that you have a lot of experience that actuarial employers will look for. So for me, when I was in high school, I ended up doing 2 different kind of internships, I guess you would call them, but one was actually a part-time job, I guess, and the other was an internship. So my first internship was in an accounting department of a small business. So for me, in that accounting position, I was able to get exposure to income statements. I learned how to do journal entries for bookkeeping. I learned about taxes and all these different sorts of things that you might not really get hands-on experience with in school. But all of these things were really beneficial for me when I started to apply for actuarial internships and jobs later on. So that's one sort of stepping stone position, is bookkeeping or accounting. Another one which I did was sort of in terms of a data management position. So I had an internship where I was responsible for keeping track of where all of a company's assets were. So I had to keep track of where all the cell phones that they owned were, like which employees had them, where all the laptops were, where all the computers were, where all the network servers were, all that sort of stuff. Because this company that I was working for, they had, I think, 7 different locations all across Canada. They had about 1,000 employees, and it would be impossible to know where everything was if we weren't keeping track of it all in a database. So my job in that company as an intern was to keep the database up to date on where all the different assets were. So that one also helped me get a lot of good experience for actuarial positions, because I was using a database and I was able to analyze data using that database and all that sort of stuff. And it was helping me gain that relevant experience that I could talk about during interviews. Another really quick job that I had, this is a part-time job that I actually still do now, is bookkeeping for my dad's business. So in that position, I was also able to get some experience with income statements and balance sheets and paying taxes, making invoices, paying bills, all that sort of stuff, which is also helpful when I started applying to actuarial internships. So those are all kind of examples of how you might right now, no matter where you are, whether you're in high school, whether you're early on in your college schooling, just these are things that you can do now that are going to help you in order to get an actuarial job later. And even if you decide not to go the actuarial route, these are still going to be valuable experiences that you can gain. They're going to help you no matter what your career path ends up being in the end. Okay, so those are kind of 3 main things I really wanted to make sure I emphasized to you today. So those are some courses that we went through. We talked about how important Excel is. And by the way, when I talked about Excel, I mentioned that you could use it in the workplace, and that's highly valuable as well. So when I talked about stepping stone positions, it's really good if you can kind of combine Excel with your stepping stone position. In one of my positions, actually multiple of the positions that I talked about, I was using Excel all the time. So that also was why it was a great stepping stone position for me, because I was using Excel, and that knowledge of Excel was something that I was able to talk about with actuarial employers later on, and they really value that experience. So if you can use Excel in your stepping stone position, that's going to help make your experience with Excel, your knowledge of Excel even stronger, and help make you a better candidate for actuarial jobs. There's one other thing that I want to go through before I take questions. So if you do have any questions, make sure you ask them in the Q&A section. So right down below the video, if you don't already see it there's a button that says Q&A. And that's where you can ask any questions about anything I've talked about already today. I do want to make sure that I do get to those. So I won't be too much longer. I'll leave about 10 minutes or so for questions. So make sure you put those in, and I'll get to those as soon as I can. But the one other thing I want to make sure that you're trying to do early on in your actuarial journey is getting exposure to the actuarial field overall. So I do help a lot of people in the actuarial field become top candidates for jobs and get their first job. And one thing that has been really, really valuable for them is if they learn actuarial concepts and terminology before they even start applying for actuarial jobs. And this is something that you can start doing early on, because the more time you spend learning about actuarial terminology and concepts, the more time you give yourself to learn those, the better it's going to be ingrained in your head, the more you're going to know, and the better candidate you're going to be for actuarial positions down the road. So try right now to be starting to get as much knowledge and understanding of actuarial concepts and terminology. You could do things like following actuarial YouTube channels. There are a few of them out there. You could look at the SOA's website. So the Society of Actuaries actually has tons of articles that are all about different actuarial concepts, about things that are going on in the actuarial field right now. And there's actually a lot of good reading on there that you'll find beneficial. You'll get to just learn the terminology that actuaries are using, what actuaries care about right now. That sort of thing can be really helpful. You might also consider talking to actuaries. It might be a little bit difficult to find a lot of actuaries to talk to, but if you can get maybe a one-on-one meeting, even if it's just 15 minutes with an actuary, that would be so beneficial, just so you can get your questions answered about the career and get a really good understanding of what actuaries do day to day. You might also want to try to shadow an actuary at work. So that would be really helpful, because you could actually maybe go into their workplace, follow along with them, see what they're doing day to day, see if you like that kind of work. And that's going to help really give you the understanding of what an actuary does and whether it's something that you really want to do for your career. So really, you just want to be exposing yourself early on to all these different actuarial concepts and become familiar with them, because the earlier you can do that, the bigger database you're going to build up in your head about actuarial topics and concepts and all that sort of stuff. And that's going to help make you a better candidate for actuarial positions later on. And this is something that you can be doing early on in your career. Okay, so I am going to take some questions now, if there are any. So if you do have any questions, right down below, there's the button that says Q&A. So you can put any questions there that you have. I'm happy to answer any questions. Or there's also the chat section if you'd rather put your question there. I will take those as well. So it looks like there's the actuarial toolkit. Oh yeah, it looks like there's an actuarial toolkit link in the chat as well, which might be helpful. Oh, that one has all the actuarial terminology that you might be interested in. So that's a good link to follow. There is one question here too. So I'll look at that one. And actually, I also prepared a big summary of everything that we talked about today, and also some more details, which I'll be giving you in a minute. Okay, so the question here was from John, and it says, how do you suggest in terms of projects to demonstrate Excel skills? Okay, so this is a really good question. Once you take a course and you want to start doing some projects, hopefully the course that you're doing will have some projects included with it that you can practice. This is something that we do offer, but I'm sure other courses in Excel offer as well. But it's really just, maybe you can even Google it, find projects online where you can use Excel to solve a certain problem, like I don't know, there might be like a calculator that you could create or something like that. But you just have to find some projects online where you could just take that page of like the project outline, I guess you would call it, and you would do that on your own time using what you've learned in a course. But another thing that you could do is, if you do end up going into a workplace and using Microsoft Excel there, those are really good projects to add to your resume as well. Like in one of my actuarial internships, I was responsible for creating what we called an annuity illustrator. I'm not going to get into the details of all that, but basically this was a project where I was responsible for keeping all the code, the programming in the background of Excel up to date. So that's a project that I had to work on for quite a bit of my internship. And it's also something that I added to my resume. And that was a big talking point when it came to getting an actuarial job later on. So the more kind of projects you can do in the workplace, or if you can just find like projects that are maybe in a school course or maybe in a course you take in Excel, that sort of thing, those would be beneficial to add to your resume. Okay, there's another question here. It says, oh, this one's from an anonymous attendee. So it says, I'm over 20 years in the IT systems experience and recently started the actuarial exams as part of my personal development, mainly because the data science side aligns with what I do. What are your thoughts on the likelihood of transitioning out of an IT role and into a more business-oriented actuarial role? Okay, so this anonymous attendee, it sounds like they already have a really good understanding of data science and also of IT systems. So that's like technology and stuff. So I'm guessing you're probably fairly confident with programs like Microsoft Excel. So in this case, since you've already passed some exams and you have some fairly good technical skills, you have some data science experience, which might be considered a stepping stone job. It's hard for me to tell for sure just based on that really quick description, but if you were doing a lot of data analysis or if you were doing a lot of data input or managing a database, that sort of thing, then that would probably be considered a stepping stone position. So those three things combined are really going to make you a great candidate for actuarial positions already. So in order to transition from your IT role to your more of an actuarial role, I think you have a really good chance of being able to do that. Okay. Are there any other questions? If you do have any other questions, make sure to ask them in the Q&A section, and I'll take those. In the meantime, while you're putting questions in there, I will put a link in the chat to where you can go if you want kind of my PDF summary of everything that I've talked about today with more details about really how to get started on your actuarial journey. So this one is actually specifically designed for high school students, but everything in there is really relevant to you if you are someone that is in college as well. So I'll put that in the chat right now. Or actually, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to. I might have to get Beth or Marta to put that into the chat because I can only send it to hosts and panelists, not to everyone. So I put that link in the chat for you, Marta.
Yes, I will put it for everybody else. Thank you, Bria.
Yeah, no problem. And so it's actuarial.com/high school for everyone. Okay. So there is one other question here. Oh, I actually answered that one already. Okay, so I don't see any other questions. So is there anything else you wanted to go through today, Marta?
Maybe, is there anything you can touch on people that are changing careers? People that are not necessarily in college or in high school, but are already in a similar career or in a career like a math teacher or somebody that is later on in their career journey and they want to go into actuarial science. Anything that you think would help them?
Yeah, for sure. So I help these types of people all the time because there's so many people that hear about the actuarial career later in their career. It's something that not a lot of people learn about when they're in high school or even in college. So I see so many people, a lot of math teachers, some engineers and stuff deciding that later on in their career, they want to become an actuary. And the good news is that that is totally possible. It happens all the time. And you really don't typically need to do a whole bunch of extra work because generally these types of people, they already have the experience, background knowledge that they need for an actuarial career. It's really just about passing those exams usually. So if you are someone that wants to switch into the actuarial career, probably one of the first things you're going to want to do, if you don't already know how to use Excel, is learn Excel. That's going to be a really important tool for you to learn. And since you're already working in a position right now, you'll be able to implement, hopefully, some of the things you've learned in Excel from a course. You'll be able to implement that into your day-to-day job. And that's going to help give you some real-world experience using Excel. Another thing you'll want to do is start working on those actuarial exams. Now, I know for me, it was really difficult to juggle studying for actuarial exams while you're also working. So it's really beneficial to kind of make sure that you have that all figured out beforehand. How are you going to manage your time between work, your other priorities that you have going on, and studying for an actuarial exam? So you'll want to kind of plan your journey and how you want to do this. If you're someone that has maybe 3 or 4 hours a day to study, which isn't most people when you're also working, then you might be able to study for an exam in maybe 3-4 months. But for someone that only has maybe an hour a day or maybe even less, you're probably going to want to plan on spending more time, more months studying for your exam. And you have to really plan that out beforehand, because if you are like me, you will maybe overestimate how much you can get done. And that a lot of the time made me feel really stressed. I felt overwhelmed with how much I was doing. I felt guilty when I wasn't studying. I felt stressed because I wasn't keeping up with the schedule that I had planned for myself. So it really can be difficult when you're working. So I do highly recommend that you just make sure you're planning realistic goals for yourself, but also making sure you know how you're going to fit that into your schedule day to day.
There's another question there
yes.
for you.
Okay, I will answer that one. So the next question here was, other than Excel, are there other programming languages that we need to get familiar with? Okay, great question. So yeah, I definitely could have gone into more details about programming languages. So Microsoft Excel itself isn't a programming language, but there is a programming language called VBA that is often used in conjunction with Excel. So this is one that I used a lot in my actuarial jobs, and VBA allows you to automate different tasks in Excel. So this is really beneficial because since actuaries are working so much with Excel, it means that they're doing a lot of manual work in Excel. And if you can use a programming language to automate a lot of the manual work that you're doing, repetitive manual work, it means that you can get your job done quicker. Usually you can eliminate errors because you're human, you're going to make mistakes if you do it yourself, but often a program, if you program it correctly, it won't make those same mistakes. So VBA is a really good one. Python is also another programming language that a lot of actuarial companies use, or actuarial positions use Python. And I've also seen quite a few companies look for SAS and SQL. So those are 4 programming languages. But the thing I want to make sure here is that you do not want to, or you do not need to go ahead and learn all of these different languages. You don't really know for sure which language you're going to end up using when you get into the company that you start your actuarial job with. So that company might use SQL, whereas another company might use Python, whereas another company might use more VBA. But as long as you know one programming language, that's really going to allow you to pick up other programming languages fairly quickly. And most of the time, if an actuarial employer is looking for a different programming language than the one that you know how to use, they're going to be totally fine with that, as long as you explain to them that you already know this programming language and you're totally willing to and able to take what you've learned from that one and apply it quickly to another programming language. It's really easy to pick up one once you know another one. So I don't suggest you taking a ton of time to learn all of those, just focus on learning one. All right, those are some great questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think we have any other questions, and we have to wrap up. I
Yes.
wanted to note a couple of things. Back in April, we had a lunch and learn with Bria, where she talked about programming languages.
Yes.
That is if you're an affiliate, it's in the library. You can go and watch it. It's just 29 minutes. And she goes over all the programming languages, which are best to learn, which you should try. So that's a great resource there. And also, as part of your affiliate membership, you also have access to online courses, and there is an Excel Basic and an Excel Advanced.
Awesome,
So
I did not know that. Good.
Yes, so for those who want to maybe start or get better at Excel, those are available to you for free with your free affiliate membership. So please make sure that you check those out, because there are a lot of benefits that you have that can get you there and prepare for those jobs and those internships. Thank you so much, Bria, for being with us today. It's always a pleasure seeing you and talking to you. And if anybody has any questions that they'd like